Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Mundy. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist and I've worked with children and families for over 20 years now. And I've always taken an attachment-focused perspective because attachment is so key to child development and development across the lifespan, really. So I'm going to talk a bit about what attachment is and why it's so important. In the early years, the attachment relationship is defined as an emotional bond between a child and a parent or caregiver. And it's based on the child's need for safety, security and protection. Because when we're born, we're pretty useless at coping on our own and we need someone to tend to us completely. Attachment theory was developed by psychiatrist John Bowlby in the 1930s. He talked about how, depending on the experiences a child has with their parents and other important adults in their life, they then develop certain ways to respond to others and they view themselves and the world in certain ways. So shaped by these experiences of being parented, children develop what we call an internal working model. This is a template of how they see themselves and the world, which is really quite clever because what they do through their internal working models is they learn to behave in a way that helps maximize their chances of getting their needs met. So these internal working models, they're mental representations of how we see ourselves. They determine how we interpret and respond to caregivers' behaviour. So they're an inner guidance system that form through attachment relationships. Now, children and many of us aren't actually conscious of our internal working models, but they're important in how they behave. So if we have learnt to expect a caregiver to meet our needs and be available and tune into us, we will then act accordingly. We will expect that. We won't need to be really clingy and really shouty. Whereas if we have learned that a caregiver isn't there, we'll have to change our behaviour. And this is where different types of attachment patterns have been defined. So how do different types of parenting relate to different attachment patterns? So research suggests that there are 4 different patterns of emotional expression and behaviour that children develop depending on the parenting they receive. We can notice them when children are stressed because these patterns are shown through how they use their parent or caregiver to help them cope with this stress. So I'll first talk about secure attachment relationships. Only about 55% of us develop a secure attachment. Even though this is the gold standard and everybody expects to develop secure attachment, it's only just over half of us. And we develop this when children experience their parents as predictable, nurturing and available. Children learn they're loved, they're noticed and understood. So in order to develop this, children need to be in tune with what their parents are showing, and they need to help them make sense of how they're feeling and how they're behaving. That's secure attachment relationship. Another category of attachment relationships is insecure ambivalent attachment. This is one of the insecure attachment relationships of which there are 2 specified. These develop when a parent is less in tune with a child's needs. So if a parent is inconsistent, where they're sometimes available and sometimes not, they are more likely to develop ambivalent attachment relationships. Now, just a caveat here, we're all sometimes available and sometimes not. This is more about being consistently inconsistent. So children learn that they are more likely to get their needs met if they stay close to their parent. They can then become clingy and it's hard for them to be independent. They fear abandonment because they don't know when their parent's going to come back because of that lack of consistency. So instead of being apart from their parent, they try and stay close to them. That's insecure ambivalent. And you don't need to worry too much about the terminology. It's just remembering that some children, when parents are inconsistent, very inconsistent, they have to learn to stay close all the time to get their needs met. So the next type of attachment relationship is the insecure avoidant attachment. So children who have parents are rarely available, quite punishing or neglectful, learn to suppress their feelings. They learn not to ask for help when they need it. And this is called avoidant attachment relationships. They can become independent, scared of being rejected, and much more led by thoughts and feelings because feelings are quite scary and they have to dismiss them because there's no one to tend to them. The last of the 4 attachment relationships is disorganised attachment. Sadly, it happens when children are exposed to very frightening caregiving. They develop disorganised attachment relationships because they've got no way to organise this chaos and this fear. And this trauma is through somebody who's supposed to be protecting you and providing you support. This leaves the child consistently unsure of how their parent will respond. They don't know what to do. Their supposed source of comfort is actually the source of fear. And with this becomes just living in survival, being all over the place. You don't have any clear strategy to keep your parent available, your caregiver available, because they're too scary. we need to remember that secure attachment relationships, they might be what we aspire to, but we can't all have them. So remember, nearly half of us lean towards insecure attachment relationships. It's not what we chose, it's how we were parented. And they're all adaptive ways to fit with the parenting we have experienced. Sometimes we talk about them as pathological. Actually, they're very, very helpful. They're adapting to get our needs met to the parenting we're given. If you worry about your attachment relationship with your child, please remember we all have strengths and struggles. Some behaviour is developmentally normal and not a sign of insecure attachment. We need to focus on being good enough, not perfect, and we need to acknowledge that actually we won't get it right all the time. That does not mean your child will be insecurely attached. It means we just have to focus on rupture and repair a bit more. The other thing to remember is that nobody is available and nurturing all the time. It's just not humanly possible. A study on infant attachment found that parents need to be in tune with their babies about 50% of the time to develop a secure attachment relationship. That was by researchers called Woolhouse et al. 2019. So try not to worry too much if you feel like you're getting it wrong more than you'd like to. I think that's what most parents feel. And for those of you with little ones, you might also be thinking about your toddler's behaviour. They might have become very clingy. Oh no, you might worry about them being ambivalent, or they might have become overly independent. Oh no, you might worry about them becoming overly avoidant. And then they might oscillate between the two, and it might be quite difficult for you to make sense of. This is normal. Toddlers are starting to explore the big wide world. They're wanting to do things on their own, but not always able to do so. Meltdown, separation anxiety, having to put their own shoes on are all par for the course. And even though they're very frustrating, they are not necessarily a sign of an insecure attachment. Now I've talked about the 4 different categories of attachment relationships. I want to talk about why attachment relationships are so important. The benefits of developing a secure attachment relationship, they're multitude. When we feel safe in our relationships, the world feels more exciting and less frightening. We can be vulnerable, and we know that others can help us, and we can actually reach out for help. We can be curious, and we can find joy more easily. Our internal working models shape us into seeing the world in a certain way. And when we have offered parenting that helps our child develop security, we start to believe we're worthy and lovable, and that we can influence others. When things get too much, we have a safe base to return to. If you're interested in how this works, have a look at the Circle of Security. We'll post the link in the caption. It's a really useful video to explain it. So, of course, when we have that, we're going to be much more able to explore the world, be curious, and feel safe in who we are, and learn to trust others. Also important emotional and relational well-being. So when we're little, as I've said in previous reels about emotional regulation, co-regulation, we struggle to control our feelings and behaviours. That's normal. But not surprisingly, parents who foster secure attachment relationships offer repeated experiences of co-regulation. So again, secure attachments are important in children's emotional and behavioural development. Many people see attachment as the cornerstone of children's development, and I might be a bit biased as it's what I've worked in for the last 20 years, but there is evidence that secure attachment results in optimal brain development, the development of self-awareness and empathy, better friendships, more engagement and success in learning, and better problem solving. The list goes on. It's so important for us to try as best we can to support children to develop secure attachments. So what can you do? How can you help your child become more securely attached? There are loads of things you can do, and it's never too late if you're worried that you've got it wrong so far. And the first thing and the most important thing is that you need to reflect on your own parenting, but feel safe doing this, knowing you're always doing your best, and you will have made mistakes, and you will still make mistakes. But just like our children, we have these internal working models, and they are established early on, and they've developed from our experiences of being parented. They come out into play, often unconsciously, when we are parenting. And actually, the most significant predictor of a child developing secure attachment is how well their parents can mentalise. I've already talked about mentalisation, but this is the ability to understand their own and their others' minds. So before you think about your child's behaviour and attachment, you want to think about yours and how you have learnt to relate to others and how you have learnt to parent. So maybe ask yourself things like, where do your strengths and vulnerabilities lie as a parent? Do you tend to dismiss emotions? If so, did that happen to you when you were younger? Or are you somewhat inconsistent in your parenting? I'll put my hand up now. I tend towards ambivalence in my parenting. Where did you learn from your parents how to feel safe? Where did you learn how to manage your feelings and behaviours? Were you supported in this? Who helped you make sense of your internal world? Are you driven more by feelings or thoughts? And how does all of this translate into understanding and meeting your child's needs? All really important questions, but only ask them if you feel safe enough to do so. If you are part of a just get on with it family, you might be more likely to dismiss your child's feelings and expect them to cope on their own. And this would be more likely to lead to avoidant ways of coping. If your parents were more available, but inconsistently so, your child might start to become a bit more ambivalent, maybe needing you a bit more, maybe being a bit more clingy because they're not quite sure about your reaction. So please don't worry about your ability to change these patterns, because we've all had different experiences and we'll all have vulnerabilities. And even if you've had a very difficult childhood and you didn't have those qualities that help you develop secure attachment relationships, you can still develop secure attachment relationships with your children and others. It just takes more time and support. So the first thing you can do, and the most important thing, is reflect on yourself as a parent and a person. The second thing you can do is focus on attunement and connection with your child. So make sure you spend time noticing your child and trying to work out what they're showing. Sometimes what they express they need is actually different to what they need. So it's helping your child understand what's going on for them and making sense of it is really important. Try to ensure you have time together that is about being with each other, not just about doing. And I know that can be hard when you've got such busy schedules, but connected moments when you're influencing each other are known as intersubjective experiences, as a bit like the serve and return reel I talked about. So when my son had a nanny, it reminded me of how little time I was spending being intersubjective with him. She was spending a day a week with him without an agenda and with loads of moments of connection. And it was so good for him and her. It might sound simple, but you just need to try and enjoy each other as much as you can without being overloaded by agenda. That's connecting and tuning in. The next thing, and I've talked about this in a separate reel as well, is to be paceful. The PACE approach has been developed to help children, specifically to help children develop more secure attachment relationships. And it involves taking an attitude of playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy in your parenting. It sounds common sense, but actually think about whether you do it, because a lot of this can go missing when we're a bit overwhelmed ourselves. So you need to manage tricky behaviour whilst you're keeping your relationship safe and supportive. This helps secure attachments. When things get tricky, manage the behaviour whilst also showing that you love your child unconditionally. You might disapprove of them drawing all over the walls, but it doesn't mean you have to stop loving them. And it doesn't mean that you show them that you don't accept them, even though you might not feel that love at the time because they've wrecked your walls. Young children need to learn that what they have done is unhelpful and find other ways to behave instead of them feeling that they are bad. So to help them feel more secure in their relationship, of course we need to discipline them, but with warmth and empathy. Discipline is teaching, not punishing. And the more secure they feel in their relationship with you, the more they will let you influence them. Connect with them before you correct the behaviour, because this helps them feel understood and it helps your attachment relationship and behavioural development. Focus on attunement and connection, focus on managing tricky behaviours without ruining your relationship, and most importantly, focus upon yourself. In my Stop That Now, I Don't Know How, there is a step-by-step guide to managing tricky behaviour without getting in the way of your relationship. I would also recommend having a look at The Power of Showing Up by Dan Siegel and Tina Pay Bryson, because this looks about attachment and brain research and provides some really simple ideas to help you and your child feel more secure together. We need to make mistakes and have ruptures in our relationships to reconnect and deepen that attachment security. So when you do get it wrong, give yourself a pat on the back and think of it as a chance to get closer to your child and show them that we all make mistakes. If you feel you're really struggling though, then please do ask for help. Attachment is just a huge field and I can't cover it in any detail here, but I do talk about it a lot on my social media, so please do follow Parenting Through Stories if you're interested in finding out more. I also really like the account at Babies and Brains, as well as an amazing book by Bethany Saltzman for great information on attachment, including us as adults and our attachment relationships. Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Mundy, a consultant clinical psychologist and DDP practitioner. I'm also the creator and author of Parenting Through Stories, an interactive approach to support young children and their parents to understand and cope with feelings and behaviours. Do check out Bartley's books for a fun and helpful read. This is Bartley's books. I would love you to follow my social media at Parenting Through Stories, where I talk about all things parenting, from birth to parenthood, In a realistic and non-shaming way, I draw on 20 years' experience of working with families and a keen interest in attachment and parental wellbeing. Thank you to MindFriend for having me today. It's been great fun, really good.
That's really good.
Thank you. Yay!